Alright, final part of this 6-part epic. We are going to storm the Baron's castle and finally put the mystery of the haunted circus to rest. We actually enter the Baron's castle from way below ground, and it's one of the cooler things about this level is there's a neat progression that I'll demonstrate soon, but this is our first glimpse of Baron Pete, and the first confirmation that he actually exists. I, for one, have been a little skeptical of the ghosts since we first met them in the jungle. Mickey didn't seem to suspect Baron Pete initially at all, and really seemed strange for them to not immediately suspect the guy in the giant evil castle directly across the, well, I don't know, short jaunt away. But as far as level design goes here, this is one I kind of appreciate because there's an interesting progression visually. Here we start in this very green, dark area. It's the dungeon, there's fire, there's swinging balls of spikes. And as we move through the level, the whole color scheme changes. Really, the design as a whole changes to represent us progressing through the levels of Baron Pete's castle, moving up toward the parapets where he hangs out. The candle enemies come back, and we also see the tiny ghosts here now that we're inside the castle, and the level design has changed entirely. If you hang around those suits of armor, the little goats will spawn infinitely. We also see these star balls return. I don't know what they're supposed to do, don't know why they're there. They just kind of hang there, you can slide off of them, they don't do anything. This is another enemy there are exactly 2 of in the game. One in the haunted house, one here. It just seems strange to even bother. As a whole, this level's not bad. It's got a good level of difficulty to it. It does have, well, as we're about to start here, it does have a Capcom staple in boss refights. As we enter this door here, now we have to refight the very first boss in the game, the Firewall Juggler. Of course, now that we have all sorts of other costumes, he's really very trivial. You can just shoot him in the face over and over with the cowboy suit. But we're going to go ahead and cut this out, because we've seen it already, and the fight's exactly the same otherwise. Yeah, these ghosts just kind of spawn constantly. It's annoying if you want to get anything done in these areas, but you can just press through them if you want. We're going to get the coins out of this golden box here, though, which is actually entirely pointless because there's no more shops. We're going to do it anyway. The music here is not bad either. It kind of gives it nice, kind of evil, medieval vibe. And the second and last boss refight here, the portrait of Pete. It's not even Baron Von Pete. It actually resembles Emperor Pete from the first Magical Quest game, which this is actually a sequel to. But since that fight is long, boring, and exactly the same as it was in the Haunted House, we went ahead and cut it out. And again, the level design changes entirely to represent, now we're moving even higher into Pete's castle towards the open area where there's columns and parapets, and we can see the storm raging outside. This is actually a really neat area as far as design goes. These pillar faces blow fire at you, but they have a really high recharge time, so they're really easy to get past. You'll probably take damage from one of them the first time and then never again. There's one of these guys in the jungle, so up to a grand total of 3 Pete dart blowers. Yeah, and these are also only in this level. Just reusing resources from the past game, I guess. It just seems really strange to have such basic things like moving platforms in exactly one level. Some free stuff there, really easy to get to. The ghosts. And these cannons are kind of cool. They at least offer one of the more challenging platforming areas in the game. Not that it is especially challenging, it's just one of the more challenging ones in the game. But considering who the game is aimed at, it's still really easy. You just gotta climb up, and there's cannons shooting at you. Sometimes they have little parachutes, sometimes they don't, so there's a bit of a randomness factor to it. And yeah, we're already through it. And we are rapidly approaching the fight with Baron Von Pete. Here he is. As a Capcom boss, he of course has more than one form, and this first form actually has two essentially phases to it. The first phase, you have to break off his helmet. You can't jump on it. When you can't jump on the helmet, you'll take damage from the horns. But you can just shoot it 6 or 7 times and it'll break right off. And then we enter this phase of the battle, which is a waiting game more than anything. If I was a little quicker on the draw, this fight would be over already, but this way you get to see some of his attacks. He does various things with energy orbs. They'll run across the ground at you, or he'll shoot them into the sky, or they'll do sort of an upside-down parabola toward you. And when he stands in front of the cauldrons, he summons skeleton frogs. You can jump on his hands, but not when they're generating energy. Then you take damage, as you've seen me do a couple of times. And now and again he'll put his hands and fists up by his head so you can't jump on them. It's his one defense from being just, well, defeated immediately. Because as soon as you jump on his head, he doesn't have invisibility frames after being jumped on, so you just bounce on his head until he dies. And once you get up here, this fight is entirely trivial and ends very quickly. Don't ask me what that goopy face thing flying away was. In all my years, I've never figured it out. Even with the internet, I still haven't figured it out. Now, I'll get into that more when we get to the ending, because we have to fight a dragon. I'm not entirely convinced this is actually a form of Pete so much as a dragon that happened to be hanging in the background. The face looks a little bit like Pete, but not enough that I'm actually entirely convinced that he turned into the dragon. I don't know. Form your own opinions. It's not really important. Dragon comes out of nowhere, returns to nowhere, and is never mentioned again. Not even in the sequel game. And I say sequels, the Magical Quest series, technically they're 1, 2, and 3, but the games aren't at all related. The first game, Mickey meets a magician who recruits him to help him take down the evil King Pete. King Pete is in no way related to Baron Von Pete, the villain of this game, who is in no way related to... no, it's Emperor Pete from the first game, my apologies. And King Pete is the bad guy in the third game. But they're not at all related because, well, first one and this one are entirely different lands, and the third game takes place within a storybook. This does raise some questions as to what exactly is going on during this ending, and when you see it, I'll go on a bit of a rant about that when we get there, because this just doesn't make any goddamn sense. The face that flew out of Baron Von Pete when we beat him flies into this ball, which Mickey grabs, and Minnie's suddenly here. Makes more sense if you're playing two-player. But now we have this orb, with Baron Von Pete's spirit inside it? Or whatever that face was? I don't know, but here it is. And the Ghost and Pluto show up because they were worried about us. But yeah, everybody's happy that we defeated Baron Von Pete, even though there's very little evidence that he was actually up to anything. We have to take the Lonesome Ghost's word on it that he wrecked the circus and their haunted house at all. Other than that, he's just been around. And Mickey and Minnie never cared enough to do anything about that. He was never evil enough that they noticed his existence. But yeah, since he wrecked the circus, we went out, jumped on his head a bunch of times, and trapped him in this sphere. I don't know what the sphere is, don't know where it comes from, but now we're gonna chuck it over the mountains. And that saves the day, I guess. Because the sky's brightened, the circus is fixed. You know, it's at least implied the circus is fixed, because we just go back to the circus now. And nothing is ever explained about what on earth was going on with Baron Von Pete, that goopy ghost face, or the sphere. Everything's just fixed now. And again, the first game doesn't explain any of this, the third game doesn't explain any of this. The entire third game takes place in a storybook that Huey, Dewey, and Louie get trapped in, and then Mickey and Donald have to go save them from. The first game is an entirely different world that a magician whisked Mickey off to. And you fight Emperor Pete, who isn't related to Baron Von Pete, who isn't related to King Pete. It's all just nonsense that happens right at the end of the game, and I don't understand what's supposed to happen here. Like, Mario managed to have a halfway coherent storyline. Bowser stole the princess. Go off and fight him. The weirdest part of Mario was all the fake Bowsers and all the other castles, but those at least had enemies that were disguised as him or something. There was something there. This game, we show up to the circus, find it ruined by someone, run into the jungle, go off to a haunted house where ghosts say it was totally Baron Von Pete, go beat the guy up, and then we do so. I don't know where Baron Von Pete came from. They didn't seem to know about him before the circus. Maybe they did. This game is nonsense. And I know I'm giving an awful lot of thought to the story of a Mickey and Minnie game on the Sega Genesis meant for kids that took place at the circus. But come on, there's gotta be some amount of coherency to this. Even as a kid, this didn't make any sense to me. Like, after the first couple of playthroughs, I just started ignoring it, but going back to it now, I did an extensive amount of research on the internet trying to figure out what the heck happened at the end of this game. And there's just nothing. This is just what happened. And hurling a ball containing an evil face that was Baron Von Pete to the horizon fixed the circus. I don't know where the dragon came from. I don't know if the dragon was Pete. I don't know where Baron Von Pete came from or why nobody did anything about him up to this point. It's just, everything's better now. Thanks for taking care of Pete. Finally, after it affects you guys at the circus. I don't know. This game is dumb. So are a lot of the games I played as a kid, and hopefully we'll get to experience more of those as I continue to do Let's Plays. So I hope this was any fun at all, and I'll see you all in future videos. Thanks for watching.